Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Cold Country Podcast where we discuss everything WVU sports. Welcome back to our channel. I am Ian McIntyre. Joining me as always, Tyler Cobb, Matt Howe, and we got Loams back with us once again. Gentlemen, how we doing?
I'm happy to be here. How are you guys?
I'm happy, but I'm not happy, man. That Utah game was brutal, and that's what we're here to talk about. So let me put up the banner here before we get going. Obviously, what did you want to say, Tyler?
I said on a scale of 1 to Fred Perry, I'm about a Walter Young Bear.
What a reference.
Some leap pull.
Obviously, Utah blows out the Mountaineers in Morgantown 48-14. The only bright spot that we had on the field all day, if you can even call it that, was Khalil Wilkins and Cam Vaughn. Cam does what he can out there. So those are the only bright spots for the Mountaineers. Devin Dampier ran wild on us, 21 for 26 with 4 touchdowns, a career high in a game for him. Did have a pick, but that was a relatively easy play for the defense to make. So overall, gentlemen, I'm questioning where do the Mountaineers go from here? Where do we go from here?
Up, question mark?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Nowhere.
Trust the climb?
I mean, to be fair, the only place you can go is up. You just lost by 34. It's kind of hard to beat that.
What was it, the worst home deficit?
I guess you could always lose by 35.
It was our worst halftime deficit. It was our worst halftime deficit since 2003. Down 28-0 at halftime, just miserable. It wasn't fun to be there as a fan, let alone the score, but it was raining outside. And, just not a great environment to be in when you're soaking wet and getting dominated in the trenches. So
I wouldn't even say just in the trenches. You got dominated everywhere.
Yeah.
There was not a single position on the field that I thought played well.
No, honestly, I mean, I talked about the defense in the Kansas game, but that is a different animal entirely when you look at this game. I mean, 48 points. 48 points. I know it's Utah. They're borderline being ranked again, but 48 points at home when you're coming off a game where you just got dominated on the road and you're supposed to be mad, you're supposed to be fired up, and you come out and throw 13 passes and look awful. You don't know what to do at quarterback, right? Your run game's not there all day. Offense is struggling until I assume Utah put in their second string defensive players when Khalil Wilkins came in and got the tutties, but just inexcusable.
Just bad all around. You mentioned the one bright spot was Khalil, but even Khalil, like you said, he was playing the second string, and even then, I mean, he missed a wide open Jeff Weimer for a touchdown and a wide open Ryan Ward for a touchdown on the underthrown ball. Now, I mean, it was catchable. It should have been caught, and it would have gone into the end zone. But at the same time, you were running out of the pocket, and he was wide open, and you underthrew him. So even Khalil Wilkins, I know that's going to be the talk of the week is, do you start Khalil against BYU on the road? Even him, I wasn't super impressed with, especially when you consider the fact that he was going up against the second string. I said I didn't see any bright spots. That's obviously over-exaggerating. I thought Dior Hubbard played well. He had 10 carries for 61 yards, so he's averaging over 6 yards a carry, at least in this game, and he's done pretty well in the past 2 games, despite the outcome. Cam Vaughn, I guess, is your other bright spot, but it just feels like we never get the ball to him enough. He's by far the best player on the field, and he proves it every time he gets the ball in his hands. He's either drawing a flag or catching the ball. And the one that Khalil Wilkins threw up to him, I mean, he was pretty much surrounded by 2 defenders and just went up and grabbed it with his hands. It wasn't a body catch. It was, I'm going to grab this ball with my hands, and you are not going to take it from me. And so Dior Hubbard and Cam Vaughn, I thought, were the brightest spots on offense, and outside of that, not a whole lot else.
Yeah, 100%. Matt?
Yeah.
I know you'll probably want to talk a little bit about the offense as well. Where do you think WVU goes from here with quarterback? I mean, Tyler mentioned, do you start Khalil against BYU? Personally, I don't think it matters because I don't know what all talent we have in this quarterback room because obviously Rich doesn't trust anybody outside of Nico to throw the ball. And I don't want to say it too early, but Nico actually may not come back. So
He's
What do you
in Arizona.
Yeah, he's in Arizona with doctors right now. Is the news I've seen for him. So Nico is is he already ruled out for this BYU game?
I believe he was. I don't think he's like ruled out, but Rich Rod is pretty much saying doubtful. He's in Arizona looking at getting other opinions from other doctors.
Right.
A very weird situation given he played 4 games, which just happens to be the red shirt cutoff. And so it's going to be interesting to see the Nico situation. But again, as talented as I think Nico can be in the right system, this isn't the system for him. He just doesn't have the legs. And so Nico, I don't know what the future holds with him.
I will say, I think the clear consensus from the fan base that I have seen now is Khalil Wilkins needs to start for BYU. Sure.
Which is crazy because we were just saying a week ago that the consensus was let's see Henderson.
Right. And again, Henderson looked not great with this game. Obviously, he did better rushing than Nico has been doing. Utah has a better defense, obviously, than any of the teams we've played so far. So you're going to see a dampening effect on the stats that we're going to put out offensively. But only 7 pass attempts from Henderson in a game is very, very low.
Especially when you consider you were getting blown out at halftime.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever watched a college ball game where you have single-digit passing numbers. Attempts. It's unheard of, I think. I thought Wilkins looked great, but again, who are you playing at the point where he goes in? So I think I would stick with Henderson against BYU. And, I mean, you can always put in somebody else. We have I don't want to say deep quarterback room, but we have a couple guys in there that we could rotate through. So, but I mean, defensively, we looked like we were having some struggles. Definitely. And again, Utah, very good team. We were kind of expecting this. I would have liked to see some more on the defensive end. I think tackling wise, we were having some issues in passing protection and, coverage. There were a lot of times, I believe it was their tight end just managed to get open behind the defensive line and just a short little pass, get a couple yards after catch. And that's all you need, easy 5 yards on every passing play. It felt like for the Utes. So defensively, obviously we're having some struggles that hopefully will be rectified. And offensively, it's just a big question mark. I was watching the game on a call with Matt, and I was saying literally just, if you're getting blown out, just throw the ball at your receivers and see if they can make a play. Cam Vaughn obviously got a couple in there, but really we just don't throw the ball, and I think that is a mistake. If you guys want to jump in.
Yeah, Lomas, we go ahead and jump in. I feel that we need to pass the ball more, even though this system is built around the quarterback being able to run and be mobile, right? I think that we need more than 13 pass attempts in a game, regardless of how good the defense you're playing is. And I think that just shows a lack of confidence from Rich Rod.
I think it just comes down to a lack of confidence in the offensive line. Like they can't get anything done. So to even say that we should pass the ball, it's almost a non-factor. They won't have enough time to pass.
Well, I don't know if I would go as far. It is definitely a lack of trust in both parties. You could tell from there's a reason that he kept going with Nico despite Nico's inability to fit into his system. And that's because he did trust him to throw the ball the most. For whatever reason, he doesn't trust Henderson. And I feel like at this point, we've seen why. We all advocated for giving Henderson a chance because of what we saw him do at A&M. He got his chance and he didn't deliver. Hindsight's 2020. We called for him to be started, and if that was the right decision, it doesn't appear to be so. But there have been times where the offensive line is holding up just enough, but they're either not making a good throw, they're not making a good read. Quarterbacks specifically aren't making a good throw, aren't making a good read, or the receivers aren't getting separation. And so it is difficult to throw the ball when everything else around you is kind of stuck. And it also does not help that the run game has been no threat up to this point. We've not, outside of Pitt, where Ty Edwards kind of went crazy, there has not been a good running performance. And so when you can't run the ball, you become one dimensional, and then you can't really pass the ball either. So it's just a bad combination. There, like I said, there has, despite Cam Vaughn and Dior Hubbard being okay Saturday, there hasn't been a whole lot of bright spots. And so it's kind of hard to focus on one when you can't even do the basics of the other.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I've heard certain people in the media say that for this BYU game on Friday night, it's a short turnaround. You don't have that much time to practice, and you got to go to Utah at BYU to play a 10:30 p.m. game Eastern, 10:30 p.m. Eastern game, a night game. That place is going to be rocking, right? I've heard some people say that your goal is to not even compete in the game, but your goal is to just put something on film. And I'm not sure how much I agree with that, but to a certain extent, like the fans have to know that this probably isn't a winnable game.
I don't know if I would
100% agree.
I don't know if I would 100% agree. I won't spoil my decision for who I think that wins the game. I feel like it's probably pretty obvious, but BYU has shown some, weaknesses as well. West Virginia has just shown a lot more. We're incapable of getting or continuing drives. Third down efficiency has still been a problem. We've talked about it in 3 or 4 different episodes now. The field position battle, while I thought it was a little better against Utah, it still wasn't great. So it still feels like we're always backed up, and the opposing team is still always getting the ball at their own 50 or whatever. In this game, we were always getting the ball around the 20-25 because Utah was just scoring on every possession. And so I don't know if I would call it us incapable of winning the game because, like I said, BYU hasn't shown that they're as good as Kansas or Utah. But then again, Kansas just lost to Cincinnati. So what do you make of that? It's just been rough. There's a lot of negatives, very few positives. Going to be rough sledding moving forward.
Yeah, I think so. And that leads me to ask you, Matt, where do you think the ceiling is for this team? Because, you look at our past 2 games, especially, and you just wonder if you can find any more wins on the schedule. And it's just sad to think, in 2018, which honestly isn't that long ago, you were looking for losses. And now you're looking for wins on the schedule. Like, that sucks as a fan. But where do you think this team could go for this year? And then you get Tyler and Matt Loomis, you can jump in on this too. How do you think we rebuild in the coming years? What needs to happen?
Well, I mean, like you said, it could be disheartening as a fan, but I will say again, it's a rebuilding year. We have essentially the worst turnover going into this year in terms of staff, obviously, but our players. I mean, it's just that's going to be part of the game. You have to also consider how late into the process we made the coaching change. So the timing of that in terms of getting players in, I just think not to throw away the time we have here. Obviously, you don't want to do that. But you can definitely look forward to the coming years and expect definite improvements over what you have right now. Just nature of the beast. You're not in a good position. The cards you're dealt, right? You're not expecting a whole lot. Like Tyler was saying, there are weaknesses shown in every team we have to play. You could argue that Tech hasn't shown any weaknesses, but there's a lot of football to be played this season. And even if we didn't win a single game, we beat Pitt.
That's true.
We said it. We said 2-10, but if one of the 2 is Pitt, we'd be happy.
Yeah, and I don't want to be a hypocrite and turn around and change my mind on that. I would like to see us improve even if that means we don't win a game, I wouldn't say I'd be happy, but I feel a little bit content with beating Pitt, even if that was our only win on the schedule. But I mean, to go forward, there are teams, every team here is beatable, but the margins could definitely look slim looking ahead. I mean,
I don't know
there's
if I
a
would
lot of
say
football
every
left
team
in the
is
season.
beatable.
There's a lot of football left to be played.
I don't know if I'd say every team is beatable.
Yeah,
Anything
not at
can
this
happen.
moment in time.
You said so. What was your first question? Ceiling moving forward. I said after Ohio, I thought the ceiling was what 5-7. UCF, Colorado, or UCF, Houston, Colorado being the other wins, and Pitt, obviously. I think that stays about the same. Like I said, BYU has shown some weaknesses, but it's Lavelle Edwards, in my opinion, is still one of the most underrated places to play in the country, especially at night. So I don't know if you find a way to come out of that game with a win, but in my opinion, UCF, Houston, West, and Colorado are still winnable games. Rich Rod's teams get better as the year goes on. He showed that last year. Jacksonville State started 0-3, ended the season 9-0. And so is this team going to win out and finish 7-2 in conference play, 9-3 overall? No, it's not going to happen. But I could see us finding a way to pull out one or two down the stretch. Is 4-8 an ideal year? No. But if your team is at least fighting for some wins down the stretch, that gives you something to look forward to next year. You mentioned looking forward to next year. It seems way too early. We're only 5 games in. So, what are you looking forward to when it comes to next year? We mentioned this off camera, but it is easier to determine the positions that you don't need in the portal or in recruiting than it is that you do need. Cam Vaughn and Jaheim White, if they stay, are your 2 clearest bright spots on the offense that will still have eligibility. Other than that, Nick Cray and Landon Livingston are still somewhat young, and I could see improving as the year goes on, and if they're a part of this unit next year on the O-line. But everybody else on the O-line is either out of eligibility or I have no interest in seeing back. On the defense, you got a lot of seniors on the defense, and so, that's tough to see as well. I'm just nervous because you had a lot of turnover this year, and that is, I don't want to say the excuse of why we're not being able to put results on the field, but it is a lot of the reason is you had so much turnover. You're looking at almost as much next year. You had 80 new players this year. You're probably looking at 50 to 60 next year as well.
Yeah,
So,
and again, that's an important consideration, but you have to remember that when we got to access the portal is different. We were late to the portal. So we're going to be on a more even playing field going into next season.
I actually looked that up beforehand. It was not as late as a start as we remember. And so I don't think it was as much on the us being late to the portal because it was only 5 days late, I believe. So we only got a 5-day head start, or everybody else only got a 5-day head start on us. To me, it was more of he didn't have assistant coaches in play. So he was also worried about building a staff. And it's a lot easier to convince players to come to your school when you have a staff in place.
That's normally their primary point of contact is their positional coach.
Yeah, exactly. So next year, while the portal class should be better, it wasn't necessarily because Rich Rod got a late start, even though I said that as well. I didn't realize that it was not as late as I thought. More so because he was busy building a staff, and when you were going to recruit players, you didn't have a staff in place. It's kind of hard to convince an offensive lineman to come to your school when you don't have an O-line coach, right? And so hopefully next year will be better. It's way too early to start talking about hopes or record predictions or what the ceiling, floor, or what Rich Rod needs to have a vote of confidence in the fan base, but it should be better. As for this year, I just want to see you go out and play. We've already established that you're going to be lucky to make a bowl game, if that. So at this point, just go out and play hard, which I think that the defense is still doing. There's been a couple instances I've seen on offense where it seems like there is a little bit of, like, no pun intended, but like soft edge, where instead of hard edge, you're seeing a little bit of soft edge, as Rich Rod would say. But on defense, for the most part, I still think they're fighting. They're just missing tackles a lot.
Got to clean that up. You got to clean up his tackles.
I can't remember the exact number that the Ear Sports guys said earlier today. It was something like 27 against Utah and 60, 70 some on the season thus far. I can't remember if it was quite that much, but it was ridiculously high. So moving forward on defense, you have got to clean up missed tackles. You've got to continue to play hard and just trust that Zach Alley can find a way to fix the mistakes that he has seen. And the way Zach Alley has coached thus far, I don't have a doubt that he'll find a way to do that. So not a whole lot of positives other than it's year zero, put in quotation marks. Everybody else seems to get a year zero. We'll give Rich Rod his year zero as well. And just look for the positives moving forward, and rather than just hyper focusing on all the negatives.
Yeah, and I think I should call out the people who are already calling for Rich Rod's firing. Like, what are you talking about? Like, when he first came here, he went 3-8. So it was a very disappointing season, even from that perspective. I know we got NIL now, we got the portal, but dude went 3-8 and almost took us to a national title game. So you got to give the dude time, right? And especially for someone like Rich Rod, the system that he puts in place, you need time to let that sit and develop and go get the guys in the portal who are right for the job. That's just something that you got to do.
It'll get better. I agree. I just think that calling for a guy's job after 5 games, like as rough as the start to the season has been, that's quite ridiculous, right? Especially because you did beat Pitt. Like that's something that Neil Brown only was able to do once against the worst Pitt team in a long time. And so Rich Rod already has the same amount of wins over Pitt in his second tenure than Neil Brown did in his 3 attempts. And so, or was it 4 attempts? No, 3 attempts. 3 attempts. You have at least that. Give the man some time.
Yeah. I mean, we can have that conversation if we're sitting here at the same point in 2 years' time, right?
Yeah.
Then that's a conversation we can have. But for right now, you just can't make that conversation with all the variables at play. He ain't doing the best job, but you got to give him time. So that's our recap of the Utah game, unless you guys got any more to add about it.
Were we clear on who exactly we think should be starting and why for this game?
I'll just quickly say, again, my opinion is it really doesn't matter because this game is it's probably the toughest left on the schedule, unless you look at Arizona State, but this game's going to be insanely difficult, and the talent we've seen so far hasn't given us much promise. But I think with the momentum that you had last game, I think you see Khalil Wilkins start. It would not upset me if Henderson start. If it were me, I would probably start Khalil Wilkins.
I am similar in the opinion with you that I don't really think it matters. My opinion on who should be QB1 is that we don't have a QB1, as bad as that sounds. There was a reason that Nico was trusted so much that, like, we've said this before, it was kind of silly of us to believe that Rich Rod have 5 quarterbacks that he could win with and not realize that that's him saying that, hey, we don't have any quarterbacks. I don't know if you 3 believe in that if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. If you have 5 quarterbacks, you definitely don't have a quarterback. And so with Nico out, even though I still don't think Nico would find much more success than any of the other guys, it's between Khalil. I don't even know. It's basically 50-50-50 between all the guys. I would go with Khalil because at least he showed you a little bit of a spark. One thing I'll give Khalil Wilkins credit for is it didn't seem like he was determined on option plays, which option to go with before the play. I, kind of got on. I don't want to say got onto, but like something Nico did was he never pulled the ball because he wasn't able to run. Like if he pulled the ball, the edge rusher was to him before he could even get out of the backfield. And then something that I noticed with Henderson was he never handed the ball off. And so with Nico, he was always handing the ball off. And with Henderson, he was always pulling. Something with Khalil is it seemed like he was at least, switching it up every now and again. That was Henderson and Khalil Wilkins both got a shot at that like kind of sweep option play. And Wilkins handed it off to Jared Bowie, and Bowie ran it for 60-some yards. And then Khalil Wilkins also had a couple run plays in there. So I'll give Khalil Wilkins credit. He did make some different reads rather than predetermining whether he was going to pull or hand it off. He was willing to throw it deep. He threw the ball to Cam Vaughn. Cam Vaughn catches it for a touchdown. He threw to Rodney Gallagher. I didn't think it was OPI. It was ticky-tack, whatever, but at least he threw it up. Again, he made some mistakes, and he is still young. But like you said, try to ride some momentum. I also would not be mad if you saw Henderson again because, like we both said, it doesn't really matter at this point because I don't think you have a true QB1. So that's kind of my opinion.
I think Khalil, like you said, just with him switching it up, I think that's the best argument for him. I would give the nod to Henderson maybe just because of the experience. But what did that give you at the last game? I don't know. Again, I'll go back and look at our previous games and say, if you have this quarterback room and you don't know who to pick, you really needed to flesh it out earlier. So it's just like you said, I don't know who it should be. Maybe somebody else will pop up and they'll look a little bit better than everyone else in the next game. And then we'll have 3 guys to choose from next week. So It just feels like that kind of season. I think I'd stick with Henderson again just because of the experience there. But we got to see improvement regardless of who we pick.
Absolutely.
So here's hoping.
Yeah, I think I'm riding in the same boat as you. I would personally still ride with Henderson, even though, quite honestly, the stats are indicating that Khalil is performing better. I just don't think we're at that point in the season yet. And obviously, it's the locker rooms, like, everyone's trying to win. Like, you don't just go out there to play. But at a certain point, you got to think about some of the vibes in that maybe some of these older guys might look at turning to the freshmen a little early as a sign of disrespect. Like, I don't want to lose these seniors and have them just give up. So maybe a couple more weeks, and then I'd personally be okay with switching to Khalil or even Scotty. I know Scotty hasn't seen any playing time since Pitt, but
Max Brown is still there too. I mean, he got 3 snaps against Utah and
He got hurt, didn't he?
got hurt. I don't know what
yeah.
the full injury is, but he finally got some snaps after supposedly being in that room all off season and then getting a little dinged up prior to the season starting. So we finally saw Max Brown. So I guess he's in the equation as well. I wouldn't hate seeing Max Brown against BYU if he's ready or able to go and not injured. Because if you watch some of his as turnover prone as he is, he could sling the ball. He could throw the ball pretty well. So
yeah, quite honestly, that might not be a bad idea. There's like borderline no film. So
maybe you look to Max Brown. And so it's just a difficult decision. Either way, it's going to be tough to go into Lavelle Edwards. I don't really know if it matters who you start with.
Yeah, I think so too. And honestly, besides Khalil, the only good thing to come out in this game was the merch. Dude, this hat is fire. That hoodie is fire. The old logo is fire. The throwback uniforms are pretty fire.
This may be a hot take.
Dumpster fire.
Maybe a hot take, but I would not be opposed to going to our primary uniforms is our old school colors.
I love the old uniforms.
I know that is probably a very hot and controversial take because we have been blue and like the mustard gold for so long. But I just love the way the old gold and the darker navy play off of each other, and it also gives you the option to go with like the baby blue logo, even though that's not the traditional color. But I do almost think West Virginia would look better if we went with the old gold and darker navy than our current set.
Well, you know, the uniforms that we wear now and those uniforms, like, it is so hard to find a bad looking uniform besides some of the obvious ones that we've had recently. But like overall, our team has been pretty decked out in some nice uniforms.
Our team's so bad, we got to brag on the uniforms.
Yeah, that's the point we're at. All right, boys, should we move on to the Coal Country edition of the top 25 and just discuss this a little bit?
Yeah, I think let's just throw up the current AP top 25 and just start chit-chatting.
All right, so this is the Week 6 AP Top 25 ranking. Obviously, some teams that you expect to be where they're at, and others make you shake your head a little bit in natural AP fashion. So, Tyler, you're usually the most vocal when it comes to the AP rankings. What are your initial thoughts here?
Terrible. So there's a couple things that I noticed first, and one is the fact that there is no set criteria, so to speak, for all the AP voters. Is it resume based? Is it who they think would beat who on a neutral field? Is it a combination of both? Does strength of schedule get considered? How do you determine what heads to heads matter more than the others? Because right now, we talked about this beforehand. Florida State, Alabama, Georgia, and Virginia have a circle of head-to-head all losing to one another, with the exception of, Virginia hasn't played Tennessee or Alabama hasn't played Tennessee. So, do you put Virginia above Florida State above Bama, Bama above Georgia, Georgia above Tennessee because they've all beaten each other, but they all have a loss to somebody else? Difficult.
Yep.
I still think as bad as this list is, and it is terrible, Texas is way too high, and Texas Tech and Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech should all be top 10. As bad as some of these positions, I think they are. The biggest thing that stands out to me is Arizona State being ranked and Mississippi State not being ranked. That makes no sense to me because Mississippi State's only loss is to a top 15 Tennessee team in overtime, I believe, by 3 points. And Mississippi State has the head-to-head win over Arizona State. And Arizona State has no top 25 wins.
It makes you wonder if the voters watch the games.
I don't think they do. I genuinely don't think they watch the games.
They definitely miss a couple of the key ones.
This makes you question if they even know the outcomes of the games. Because if you know that Arizona State and Mississippi State have played each other, Mississippi State won, and Arizona State has not beaten another top 25 team, and Mississippi State just narrowly lost to Tennessee, how on earth do you put Arizona State above Mississippi State?
Well, we don't.
We don't.
So I wouldn't even go as far to say it makes you question whether or not the voters watch the games. It makes me question if they even know all the schedules of the teams they're voting on. Do they know all the head-to-head results of the team they're voting on? Are they aware that Texas struggled against UTEP? Are they aware that Illinois got their, arse whooped against Indiana?
I think it just comes down to that there's so many games that they just don't have time to watch all the games and watch all the film before it's time to put their votes in. Because you're right. I mean, these guys, do they know if that Texas struggled against these not very good teams? That they probably didn't get a chance to watch the game. They just look at the final score.
I will say
fine. You don't have to watch the games, but even if you just looked at the outcomes and didn't watch a second of any of the games, this is not the list you would come up with.
There's about 30 to 35 teams that are probably in consideration or get votes week to week. All you got to do is, and this is the basic of the basics, you don't even have to watch the games. If you look at the outcome and you go look at the box score, you could probably make a better list than what this is. And then You add on top of, hey, let's watch at least the highlights of each game. Let's watch a clip here and there to see who looked like the better team on the field. You could make a list miles better than this. And so,
I will say one thing: the SEC is undefeated in hypotheticals.
Always
as they should be.
It just means more.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is Penn State, right? Like, I get that you lost a close game to Oregon, who is a better team than you, but you did it at home, and you haven't played anybody else the rest of the season. Like, who did you play before Oregon? And the fact that you're ranked above Indiana, the fact that you're ranked above Texas Tech, it's questionable at best for me.
You played a game against Nevada that in the moment felt way closer than it needed to be. A game against FIU, you shut them out, but you only scored 34. And then you played a Villanova team, an FCS opponent. So you have 2 G5 wins, one that was closer, or one that seemed closer than it needed to be, and then an FCS win, and you lose at home in double OT to Oregon, while Oregon is, who in my opinion should be the number 1 team in the country. You still have not done anything else other than that to prove that you should be above Texas Tech, Iowa State, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, Missouri. Like, those are all teams that I would put above Penn State strictly based off of what they've been able to do with the games they've had.
Yeah, Vanderbilt's resume is incredible. They have an incredible resume.
Outside of like the top 6 there, Vanderbilt probably has the best resume in college football. They have a blowout win over Virginia Tech on the road. Obviously, their FCS opponent was right before that. They have a blowout win over South Carolina on the road, and they put 70 on Georgia State and 55 on Utah State. They have handled business against the teams they should handle business against, and then they blew out the 2 chances they had to play Power 4 opponents. So why on earth is a Penn State team that has had one opportunity to show how good they are and lost and not done what they should against one of their G5 teams and only beaten G5 and FCS teams above Vanderbilt?
Maybe it comes down to strength of opponent. I mean, you look at Vanderbilt and they played Virginia Tech, who is having an awful year, and South Carolina. That's a pretty good win, quite honestly, at South Carolina. But you take a look at Penn State and they lost a nail biter to Oregon at home, who I believe all 4 of us agree is the best team in the country. So it comes down to strength of schedule and strength of matchup.
However, that's openly admitting you value quality losses over pretty decent wins. Vanderbilt's 5-0 and has
voters do, yeah.
Vanderbilt is 5-0 and has 2 blowout wins over Power 4 opponents, and Penn State is 3-1 and has 1 loss to the only Power 4 opponent they've played.
I think quality losses are relevant, but in terms of how you weight them,
they should be relevant.
You can't put Penn State in the top 10 with a loss like that.
They should be relevant, but they should not take precedent over pretty good wins.
Yeah, undefeated, very strong season.
Beating South Carolina by 24 on the road is a pretty good win.
Yeah, and again, I thought they were ranked too high before. I mean, I don't necessarily want to do a deep dive into Penn State, but defensively, I think they're a powerhouse. Offensively, I don't think they can hold up to the top 10 teams at the very least, and maybe some of the teams behind the top 10 offensively. Defensively, again, I think they're a really powerful team, but I don't think that puts you in the top 10.
Yeah, another thing, just looking at the list, is Indiana, right? I think a lot of people still undervalue the victory over Illinois in absolute blowout. And they were ranked number 9 at the time. To say Indiana's top 5 is just a little bit of a stretch, but like, it's not crazy to say that they're 6. It's not crazy to say that they're 7.
They should be above Penn State.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to make a comment about the dynamic depending on what conference you're in. LSU won against Clemson, who preseason looked like a potential national title contender. And then Clemson really has tanked so far this season, but that didn't drop LSU down at all. Indiana blew out Illinois, and immediately people said, well, Illinois was overrated, so Indiana can't be that good. The difference in reaction to a strong win, LSU versus Indiana, was ridiculous, because you made the same argument and said, well, LSU's actually a good team. Indiana, we don't know. And you
SEC
saw,
bias.
again, LSU lost against Ole Miss this weekend. Not to say that Ole Miss is a bad team and LSU sucks and all this, but it just shows the difference in how people treat based on the badge that they wear on their chest.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of brand bias when it comes to the AP poll, for sure. There has to be. Another thing I'm looking at, I know you guys were talking about it before we started recording, but the comparison between Alabama and Florida State, Alabama being above Florida State, even though Florida State beat them, how does that sort of stack up?
I still think we are underplaying how Florida State beat Alabama. Florida State outclassed Alabama. They beat them by 2 touchdowns. I know it was at home for Florida State, but they outclassed Alabama. And because of one win, a very good win, I'll give Alabama that, a very good win against a very good Georgia team on the road. It shouldn't be an 8-spot difference. Florida State should not be 8 spots below Alabama.
And then again, that goes back to say, people like Iowa State, Texas Tech, they have, like Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, they have to be higher. So I think that naturally narrows that gap, because I see Alabama out of the top 10 here as well when you talk about those other teams moving up. So I think in our hypothetical list, that gap shrinks between them. And I do think Florida State could easily, say, be 14, Alabama 16, something like that.
It would be close. I don't know if I would have Florida State above Alabama, but it would be tough for me not to, considering the head-to-head against them. Excuse me. I'm just burping up a storm. Now, I think it goes back to the Indiana LSU win. Like, they're valuing LSU's wins over a preseason top 25, 2 preseason top 25 teams more than Indiana's current top 25 win against Illinois, because LSU is LSU and Indiana's Indiana. It almost feels like that when considering Florida State. They're downplaying Virginia, the loss to Virginia on the road, because it's Virginia. That's why they're downplaying the loss to Virginia on the road. Whereas with Alabama, their losses to, it's to Florida State. So you can see it. There's very obvious brand bias. If there wasn't Penn State, Texas, Alabama would not be in the top 10. Vanderbilt, Iowa State, Texas Tech, probably Georgia Tech would all be in the top 10. You probably wouldn't see Notre Dame ranked at all. Despite what they've been able to do against Arkansas and Purdue, they still lost 2 games. They are 500, and there are undefeated teams that are not ranked in the AP poll top 25 just because of the brand name.
Yeah, and their 2 wins, again, Notre Dame's 2 wins are Arkansas and Purdue. So I don't know. I don't know about Notre Dame. They're interesting. Obviously, I love to troll Notre Dame, but you can see they're a good team. All right, guys. Sorry we lost Matt. He met Owen Schmidt in the B gap, so he had to go.
He had to be sent to the hospital.
So I don't know. I think we covered a lot of what is so wrong with this AP poll. Anyways, the last thing, before we hang it up, talking about Virginia, they have a top-rated offense in the country, but off a win against Florida State, do they deserve to be ranked? I know they have a really strong record. They're 4-1. Do they deserve to be ranked?
You have to consider that NC State loss, and then you consider the NC State loss and realize that they just lost to a really bad Virginia Tech team. So I don't know if I would go as far to say Virginia should be ranked just because they managed to beat Florida State, who up to this point has looked pretty solid. And that's not trying to downplay what Virginia has done. I just think that there are still teams out there who have done more. You look at an undefeated Maryland team who just beat Wisconsin on the road. And I know Wisconsin has not looked good, but Maryland has looked pretty solid. I'm trying to think of other teams that are no longer ranked. Mississippi State, we already talked about them. If you're going to include Arizona State, you have to include the team that beat them and only has a loss by 3 points in overtime to a team you are rating in the top 15. And so Virginia's tricky. That whole Virginia over Florida State over Bama over Georgia situation is tricky. You kind of need more head-to-head results to figure out what that loss was. Was it a fluky loss by Florida State, or is Virginia really that good? Was it a 2024 Notre Dame loses to Northern Illinois because they just didn't show up, or is Virginia legit? Right? So I don't hate them being ranked. I don't know if I would have them being ranked, especially considering the teams that are unranked. But what I will say is there are a lot more problems with this list than Virginia being 24th.
Yeah. Honestly, I think a lot of it is the fact that Arizona State is ranked because they were ranked preseason. And, the AP voters like, even though they lost, we were on to something. They sort of want to keep their preseason credibility. So I think that's why they chose to rank Arizona State.
They do have 2 quality wins against 2 Big 12 teams that seem to be Big 12 contenders up to this point. But that shouldn't warrant you ranking Arizona State. That should warrant you ranking Mississippi State, because that makes Mississippi State's win over them look even more impressive.
Yeah, you have to reward the head-to-head in that scenario.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Are we done ranting about this for now? I'm sure we'll hop on it in a later week.
AP poll needs to be banned. Something Matt Howe said before he got trucked by Owen Schmidt in the B gap was that we need to create our own system of rankings. How that is going to work, I have no idea, but stay tuned for that. That will probably come in the bye week when we have some free time.
Dude, yeah, we could start posting, the Coal Country weekly updates. And just put West Virginia at 1 every week. And then, from there, we'll put in the rest of the team.
West Virginia has the most quality loss in the country to Ohio.
That's true.
West Virginia has the best loss in the country, if I'm being honest.
Parker Navarro. He's going to be playing on Sundays.
We're going to be talking about them for the top group of 5 school, by the end of the season, and people just refuse to acknowledge that.
Parker Navarro is a Heisman candidate. That's all I'm saying.
Dude, he's good. Parker Navarro ain't nobody to joke about.
Rutgers are coming for the Huskies.
Oh, Rutgers is gonna win that. Sorry.
Scarlet Knights, baby.
I totally didn't pick the Huskies to upset Ohio State.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Well, I know what to get you guys for Christmas. some Rutgers branding.
I'm gonna get you some Army merch.
Yeah, give me some Notre Dame merch. At least I can burn it.
You know what? You're right. I actually forgot about Army's quality loss to Tarleton State. That's my bad.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode of the Coal Country Podcast. Before we log off, make sure like this video. It does a lot for the algorithm for us, so you guys see us more often. Subscribe to the channel. Follow our Instagram and X account. And do not forget about our Spotify. So that is going to do it for this episode. From me, from Tyler, from Matt Howe, wherever he is after the Owen Schmidt incident, and from Loams. We'll see you on the next episode.
Goodbye, America.